Okay, so today is Friday evening. What, March the, what is last night? Does anybody know? Nobody knows. Come on, click that mouse. Okay. All right, so
Ten?
today's the 10th. Right, today's the
Yeah.
10th of March. And that we are all elated because we've just found out that we've gotten the EIN for the Open Sangha Foundation. And so today's talk, we'll talk a little bit about Open Sangha Foundation because we're moving along. And the first thing I'd like to do is introduce everybody here to Alex. He's changed his Skype name, and that he's going to be taking the role of projects coordinator. So all the various projects that are involved inside the website um, uh, is going to be his. And I also think that there's projects outside of the website, but related to the website right now. For instance, email addresses and that kind of thing. Well, hello, Alistair. Welcome.
Hello.
So, um, we the first item on the list is to get a bank account and then get the PayPal and then get that up on the website. And they also the point about the website is now we can start concentrating on getting some content in. Now I know that Robert and I have already been working together on getting a mission statement because I think that we should use the mission statement as kind of the primary document, but it should be long and it should be
Hmm.
detailed and it should have all of the, um, uh, let us say, the juicy stuff that gets people excited about what we're doing here. And I think that we can use the chat GPT to help us do this so it doesn't sound like so it's not going to be nearly as much work as it sounds like. But Robert and I are going to be working with that. And by the way, Robert, how are things at home? I think that things are kind of beginning to swell there, are they not?
Yeah, everything's great. The baby's due in 5.5 weeks, so we're at it's almost game time here. But all is good.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
excited.
Congrats, Robert.
Thank you. It's been quite the journey.
Hmm.
Wow. It's
So
awesome.
a lot of good stuff is happening. The next thing that I would like to tell you is that I've been talking to another group. It seems to be run by a guy named Ron. Um, let's see if I can get his email up so I can give you his last name. Uh, Serrano, Serrano. Does anybody know about him or have you heard anything?
I like the peppers.
Mhm. Well, Ron, Ron and I have just done a call with his group, and that he mentioned that he had about 300 people in his group there, and that our group is kind of disorganized. No one over the past 7 years has bothered to keep track of people at all. That I don't even know how many. That sometimes we have emails and sometimes they come in on Skype and whatnot like that. But I would imagine that we probably got over the time about 300 people also. But getting back in touch with them would be problematic, a whole lot of work. But the point that I'm making is that he gave me the idea that we could possibly combine our organizations and start working together so that we can help spread well, spread the Dhamma either nobly or otherwise. Because in fact, spreading the Dhamma um, in the ordinary sense is the way that it has always been spread in the West. That's one of the things that we can, in fact, mention is that the difference between Asian Buddhism and Western Buddhism is that in Asia, due to wars and other things like that, that the monks themselves, the senior monks, were spread out. That several delegations came to Thailand on several different time frames, etc., like that. And so in Asia, the Dhamma has been spread by nobles, by monks, by wandering ascetics who knew the Dhamma well enough that they could go spread it like that, to where Western Buddhism has been spread by Christians. That's right. It's been spread. It's been spread by Christians, which means that there's a lot of misunderstandings. That it was Christians from the universities in England, Oxford and Harvard, whatever, that did the original translations. That's why there's so much Christian-sounding language in the Buddhist suttas, is because it was originally Christians who did it. So, knowing then that Western Buddhism is the ordinary kind of Buddhism for ordinary people, spread by ordinary people, and it's still growing like a wildfire now. That back in 1970, finding a book on Buddhism was very hard to do. And that the only book that I had available back then was a magical book by Christmas Humphreys called The Light of Asia. It's one of the very famous ones. And that seems to be, I don't know where he got it, but there's stories in that book that I have not seen anywhere else. So there was quite a lot of magical beliefs and magical thinking, because they thought that Buddhism was a religion. And now in Western mentality, it is a religion. And that for the real spreading of the Dhamma, we can use that as kind of a vehicle. Because in fact, in Thailand, we do have these two kinds of Buddhism. The Buddhism of the ordinary people, the farmers, the average village people and all, have a much more magical, almost religious view of the teachings of the Buddha. But especially in Bangkok and in the cities, because of Bhikkhu Buddhadasa's influences, the highly educated know the noble Dhamma. In fact, one group that would be called lawyers, that here's what happened is that Bhikkhu Buddhadasa was invited to give a series of lectures to the Thai equivalent of the judiciary, and that he gave a series of 9 lectures. This really, really cemented the law department at Thammasat University, which is basically the Royal University. It's actually on that royal area around Wat Mahatat, Wat Po, the Emerald Buddha, Wat Prak Yao. There is Thammasat University right there. So this is what was the thread, or let us say the needle that punctured the balloon that let the noble Dhamma out into the Thai society. So that most of the lawyers and most of the police and most of the politicians all over Thailand, they know about Bhikkhu Buddhadasa and they know the noble Dhamma. Now, we also have evidence that the noble Dhamma was already, before Bhikkhu Buddhadasa came along, that the noble Dhamma was already well known within the aristocracy of Thailand. And so we have these two kinds, the ordinary people, and then we have the aristocracy that also has a more noble version of the Dhamma. So we can sort of look at that in the Western mentality. But one of the things that is actually exist in both the ordinary Buddhism of Thailand and the noble part of Thailand is the whole idea of Sangha. What is Sangha? Well, it can be looked at is that the Wat and the people in the Wat, that's Sangha. We can also say that the people, especially the ones who are more established in the Dhamma, they know each other around the various Wats. That in 2002, Achan Po, when I was a monk, carried me around all over South Thailand. It was like he used my return from the United States when on that visit to go around to check things out. And so I went with him to Riong, to Chumpon, to Nakorn Sri Tamarat, to Surat Thani, in fact, to all of the big cities in South Thailand to meet with the abbots of the very large temples in those cities. And most of them, I had already known because they were monks at Wat Suan Mok. And so Wat Suan Mok's alumni then are now the head monks all throughout South Thailand. But that's not the only connection, because that kind of connection existed even in Bhikkhu Buddhadasa's day. That very, very many very famous monks in Thailand all were part of this old boys club that Bhikkhu Buddhadasa seemed to be the center of, including Achan Cha and Achan Mahaboa, and other monks like that, including some that you guys have never heard of, like Achan Panyananda, who was the abbot of the largest Wat in Thailand. I'm sure he's dead now because he was 97 when I saw him in 2002. So he's more than likely gone now. But what I'm pointing, hello, Scott, welcome.
Hello.
And so what I'm getting at is that in Western Buddhism, there is no old boys club. That everybody's relationship with Buddhism, all the Western people's relationship with Buddhism, tends to be out of books or reading things online or in the chat groups or whatever like that, which means that all the people that they know are ordinary people. They don't know any nobles. And that what it would be a good thing for us to do for the Open Sangha Foundation is to start taking Westerners who are interested in Buddhism and getting them associated with the Asians who are already in the West, that are in the Wats, in the temples, that this is the place to go learn Buddhism, is from some of the senior monks. And we've got hundreds of them in the West. And so this is what we're looking for the Open Sangha Foundation, is to help guide people into, well, you've got this much Buddhism, what are you going to do next? That in fact the point that I'm making is that when anytime anybody gets into Buddhism, if they get it correctly, then they begin to get benefit out of it right away. And so when we get benefit from something, we begin to get gung-ho about it. An example is that if a girl goes on a diet and she steps on the scales a week later and she hasn't lost any weight, then she's going to be kind of disappointed in her diet and wondering what's it all about, Alfie, and all of that kind of stuff. But if she steps on those scales and she goes down 10 kilos, she says, hot dog, we've got something going here. I can trust this diet. And then she's going to become kind of gung-ho about it. She's going to get that mojo going about that diet. Well, the same thing happens with Buddhism. And oh, so many people try Buddhism and don't get initial benefits from it. And so when that happens, one of two things will occur. One is that, like, for instance, somebody does a retreat. And if they do the retreat and they don't get anything out of it, they're more than likely not going to be going and doing any more retreats. If they didn't get anything out of the Goenka retreat, they're not going to be practicing an hour a day. They're going to kind of forget about it. Then, in fact, I've got a friend named Thad. The last time I communicated with him, he was actually the logistics manager of the Goenka retreat in big one in California. And so he's got his hands in everything there, including what they're doing with the computers. And you probably guys know that when people sign up for a Goenka retreat, they have to fill out an application. It's long and involved and all of that. And so then they take it and they computerize that stuff. And that one of the statistics that came out of that is that people generally don't do a Goenka retreat, a second one, until a few years after they do the first one. If people were really gung-ho out of coming out of a Goenka retreat, they would be thinking about going right back into the next one. But in fact, they don't. They come out of the retreat disappointed and don't get what they're looking for out of it. Now, the other side of that is that when people don't get what they want out of it, but maybe they get a little bit, then they get gung-ho and they continue to practice, but they're still not getting the benefit out of it. And so they become hardcore meditators, 2, 3, 4 hours a day, and they're still not getting the correct benefit out of it. But as you guys have probably already seen for yourselves, that you can begin to get the benefit, really good benefit out of the practice of Anapanasati right away. And that's when people get gung-ho easily, is because we're getting good results. So going back to that analogy on the girl standing on the scales, she'll either do, if she does not lose any weight after the first week or two of her diet, then she'll have two things going on, one or the other. And that is, I'm going to quit the diet because it's no good. But then later she'll come back and say, well, I've still got to go on a diet because I'm still fat. But the other possibility is when she hasn't lost any weight, now she's going to redouble her efforts and really, really get into that diet. Okay, so this is the kind of thing that we're looking for is the fact that over the next, let us say 10, 20 years, Buddhism is going to really, really grow in the West. It's one of the alternatives. That one of the things that we can say is that people are coming out of Christianity. It's a dying religion. And I think that I could go so far as to, in a humorous way, say that Christianity has been murdered by the Republican Party. Why do I say that? I think several of us already know the answer to that is because with Nixon's Southern strategy, they decided to go after the Christians, especially the Christian South, and turn them political. Now, back in the 1950s, Christianity in the South was not political. What they told the people is, you've got to get your act together. You've got to get right before God. You got to go follow all the rules and pay the payments in the collection plate and all of that kind of stuff. But now Christianity has made a change. And what is that change? Okay, all you guys are Christians now. Put on your Christian armor and go be, warriors for Christ. Go out and fix the government. Go out and fix the laws about abortion. Go do this, that, and the other thing. And a whole lot of people, especially the young people who are raised in Christianity, they realize that, hey, this is not where we're going to go. That, in fact, there was a few years, let us say from maybe about 2000 up until about 2010, during that period, there were a huge number of discussions and arguments and debates between atheists and Christians. I used to watch those things a lot. We don't see them anymore. You can say two things happened with that. One was that no one who was in the audience ever got convinced of anything. So if the debate was at a big university where all the kids were already atheists, then nobody got changed and the people went in atheists and they came out atheists. But if they did it in a church, then all the people in attendance were members of that church and they were not convinced about anything. And so I think that all of those debates have died out now simply because they weren't going anywhere. The other side of the argument was is that neither one of the sides knew how to win that argument. That the Christians, I think, hobbled the atheist into debating things that were not worth debating. Here's an example of that is, does God exist? Well, that's an irrelevant argument. All the kinds of gods you want exist so long as they leave me alone. I don't need any of the gods if they don't need me. Let's have dozens of gods. We can have them. Oh, there goes one now. and so and so whether God exists or not is irrelevant. What's relevant, the real questions are, what can God do to me when I don't do what he tells me to do? That's the real issue. In other words, do I have a soul? But the Christians and the atheists, they never debated that. They never debated no self.
I was reading the ABCs of Buddhism by
Yes.
Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, and he talks about God has 6 qualifications, and I don't think I remember all of the qualifications, but omnipresence, omnipotence, and some other ones. But anyways, he was saying all of these qualifications match up to the law of cause and effect, or I forgot the Pali.
Idiopapajayata, exactly right. So is omnipotent, omnipresent, and so it's, I forget all of the Latin kind of the words in there, but it has to do with he's always here, he always knows what's going on, and he always takes care of it. Okay, that's the omnipowerful, and yet the atheists have a very simple argument from that, and that is that if God is all knowing and he is all good, then there's a contradiction. Because if he was all good, then there wouldn't be any tsunamis. So either God is not powerful enough to prevent tsunamis, or he doesn't give a flying rip. And that's the way that we can do it. But if you look at other things, like a physicist, we can see that, in fact, that if he is idiopapajayata right there in front of us. I give you the example of gravity. Very few people can slip without falling. And that's because they can catch themselves. But if you slip, you will fall. Gravity knows where you are all the time. It knows every object. It's there. It's omniscient. Gravity is omniscient. Also, it may not be all powerful, but look at the kind of rockets we have to put up in order to escape gravity. It's pretty strong. Heavy duty strong. So, this is an example of idiopapajayata. It's the cause and effect, because gravity itself is just part of that cause and effect system.
Yeah, that's why I think so. You're talking about the debates between the atheists and the Christians.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, like spiritual people versus materialist scientists,
Mm-hmm.
and the only teaching that links the material scientist world and this inner spiritual realm is the teaching of the Buddha, because the law of dependent origination applies to the realm of science perfectly, but it also applies to the realm of how to be happy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's simple cause and effect. But the thing is, the most religious people are superstitious about happiness. They think it's going to come from some magical source. They don't realize that they are the ones that have to implement the causes and effects to actually make it happen.
Yes, in fact, that's part of our culture. Christianity has such a profound effect upon the culture of the West. And the reason that I know that is because I spent enough time out of that culture and then come back in and out and in and out. And I can really see that even though somebody could have been raised in an atheist family and never went to church. They don't know how powerfully the Christian mentality has affected our society. And so this is one of the examples of that is that, oh, your happiness depends upon something on the outside. You got to go buy our car or come to our school or vote the way we want you to vote or join our religion, and then you can have happiness. But you can't have it without us. The way that I like to say it is, unless you've got a plastic Jesus on the dashboard of your truck, you're going to crash your truck. But if you got that Jesus, well, here's the thing. Go ahead, Scott.
And the sad part is, for most Christians, it's not even that good, because they say that you can't even get it until you die. So you gotta,
right.
so you gotta go to heaven. But until then, suffering, like you must suffer, like, because it's righteous somehow to suffer. That's another Christian thing, is that suffering is very, like, they think like it's a righteous thing to do. I think.
Well, in the time of Jesus, then, Jesus was making the statement or the point that everybody can get it. The kingdom of God is at hand. The kingdom of God is within you. Here it is, okay? And that the Catholics kind of held that for a number of centuries, having saints and doing meditations and all of that kind of stuff. But when the Gutenberg Bible was published, people began to get, oh, it's the book. And they got angry at the Catholics because what was in the book was not what Catholicism taught. And so they wound up having 100 Years' War. Europe was decimated over this issue. And America is really, really deeply religious in the fact that many of the people who came from Europe did so for religious freedom because of all the wars and the repressions and everything like that. And so that kind of religion idea spread deeply into our culture, especially the point that you made, Scott, about you got to die in order to get fed. It's kind of like you got to wait until the bank burns down before you can get your money out. And that's very, very Protestant. Protestantism is the one who is very, very much way out into the future oriented. You got to do this, that, and the other thing, and build a society, and be a good boy, and do all of that kind of stuff, and still be miserable until you're dead, and then you can get something. To where the concepts of saintly behavior and getting God in your way of living, to start living according to God. But here's the problem, and that is that we as Buddhists see our God as not just part of reality, but reality itself. What is real is our God. And that within Christianity, they've got God as a very little God, that he's a dude sitting in the clouds with a great big white chair made of ivory. He's got a big, long white beard, and he's got a trident. Okay, if you look at that image, you'll recognize that's Greek. That's Zeus, and many of the people
Shiva,
in the time.
too. Shiva, I think Shiva has a trident. The
Who's
Shiva
got a?
god.
Yeah,
Shiva.
the Shiva. Right, exactly.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point about that trident that's both in the Shiva and also in Olympus.
Uh-huh.
So this image of God, the Christians have a very, very small God. But the Buddhists, we've got a really big one. That big God is Itiapapajayata, which is cause and effect. It's science itself. It's the
Also,
reality. Go ahead.
another thing I read about, there was the god Yahweh, so the God that became the only God. called Yahweh was actually just in a previous religion one particular God among many gods. Yahweh was a specific God, and then it evolved into, oh, that's the only God. But the actual God Yahweh that they're worshiping is more like a Krishna or something at the time, like before it evolved into monotheism. I'm sorry. Did someone say something? But
No.
yeah, I just thought I'd mention that. It's kind of interesting.
Okay. Well, let's take that a little bit further into the point that one of the gods, in fact, we know several of those old gods. Baal or Baal was one of them, and Eli or El was one of the others. And in fact, Eli or El was commonly worshipped. That in fact, when Jesus said, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? He used the word Eli. He did not use Yahweh. He used Eli, okay? And so in the old days, there were a number of gods. Now, here's what happened. My God is better than your God. Let's have a competition, okay? You guys dance around an altar and see if you can catch it on fire. And when you can't, we're going to douse ours with water and then still catch it on fire because you can't do that, okay? So this is in the Bible someplace, a contest between Baal and Eli, I think. So the point is that if my God is better than your God and we're better than you are, then we're going to wipe you out. And your God is not good God. He's a little God. We've got the big dude, okay, because he can beat us or he can beat you. And that's where the idea of a monotheistic God came from, is the God who's just bigger than all the other gods because he's going to whip your butt if you don't do what he says to do. And it's all a lot of power oriented, to where we don't need God to be conscious the way that we are conscious. That in fact, reality really is conscious. An example of that would be that in your normal house, in fact, every one of you is either in a car or in a building right now, and you have light switches. If you go and turn that light switch in some way knows that you have flipped it. And because it knows that, then it makes contact, and now the electrons know that they can flow down that wire and light up that light bulb. And the light bulb knows that those electrons are coming by, and he's going to get all hot about it. So, in fact, we can say then that consciousness is part of the cause and effect relationship. That if something can be affected by some cause, then at some level there is consciousness there. It knows to react. This is idiopapajayata, big time, to recognize that consciousness is everywhere, but it is also dependently arising. That it's not there all the time. It is there and there and there and there, continuously coming up and going away and whatnot like that. So going back to that issue about the atheists and the Christians, back in the 1950s, especially in, well, the only states that I knew was basically Oklahoma, South Carolina, and North Carolina. But that's a general speaking, that because they had the Lutherans had the Missouri Synod and all kinds of other things. So it actually, for me as a little kid, looked like that Christianity was really pervasive, and that something was wrong with those people who were not Christians, one way or the other. And so that was the mentality that a lot of the kids had back then, but that mentality has changed completely, because Christianity is now a minority. It's not the majority religion. In fact, in the old days, it wasn't just the majority, it was the vast majority. And also, one of the things that I had seen happen in the U.S. when I was there as a monk was Christianity was falling apart. And we could see that it was falling apart because of all of the court cases. One of the lawyers that was involved with the court case that our Watt was in said that the North Carolina law courts are clogged with cases over who owns that church property now that the church is no longer a church. Who owns that property? And if that was clogging the courts, meant that there was a whole lot of closures back then. Okay, so now that closure has continued. Why does that closure happen? It's because the kids, through public education and other educationals, recognized that they had choices now that in the 1950s, the kids then, we didn't know. Television was new back in the 1950s. I know because my family had the first television on the block. We remember specifically when the neighbor got her television. Okay, because now we weren't the only ones on the block that had a TV. This is like 1953, 1954, and so you can see that in the 1950s, television was not ubiquitous the way that it is today. But once television became ubiquitous, like in the 1960s, that's when the kids started leaving the church. But in fact, in the 1960s, I could see that the Baptist church was, let us say, a seething pile of arguments. They didn't get along. They couldn't figure out what religion was because every religion in every church could not produce what the intention was. And so people have been leaving the church, but they're still looking for that, which when they go to Buddhism, they're looking for it. It's the noble Buddhism is where we can find it, what everybody's out there looking for. And so I can see that just like in Thailand over the past 75 years, that noble Dhamma is going to get vast in the West. That you guys are good examples of it. You've heard the noble Dhamma and you have practiced the noble Dhamma and you know that it works. This is part of the practice. I'll give you a little bit about that. We all have doubts. All the Christians are full of doubts. Okay, the first doubt, in fact, that we all have is, who can fix me? I'm broken. I've got an original sin. I was defective upon manufacture. Who can I get to tweak me so that I'll be an okay human being? Okay, so this is what Christianity practices. Oh, we've got the God here. All you have to do is sprinkle this on your meal and it'll be delicious. So the Christians have found out for sure now that's not the case. That, in fact, why they even gave up on that practice and says, well, instead of being good Christians that's getting good results in a happy life, let's go fix the laws. Maybe if we can make abortion illegal, maybe if we can close those damn public schools and get our kids a good education, then we can be happy. And so there was a major shift in the mentality of Christianity, and that is what actually was a wrong turn to take. And so people have been leaving Christianity. There's the proportion of the population has gone, I think, from like 80%, 85% down to like 47, and it's still dropping. It's still dropping. So what are people who are out looking for things going to do? Well, there's a whole list of things. One of the things we can do is we can devote ourselves to our job. We can devote ourselves to education. We can devote ourselves to money. We can devote ourselves to a lot of different things. And in there, by putting our devotion into it, we will get the rewards. Guess what? Everybody's still dissatisfied. They didn't get what they were looking for with money. They didn't get what they were looking for in the jobs. They're not getting what they look for in Christianity. They're not getting what they're in fact right now. It seems like that America is all into politics, and yet nobody's getting out of politics something to make them happy. And so the Western mindset now is out there searching. This is part of the reason why Buddhism has become popular now. Like I said, in 1970, nobody heard of it. I did. I was going around talking to people about it. Nobody knew anything about it. That in fact, I remember one time when I was in high school that because I had read a book on judo, I was able to throw one of the bullies on the floor. Guess what? Nobody in that high school had ever heard about judo. Now it's taught in the military, and everybody knows about judo. We know about that move. We know that we can grab this guy by the shoulder and move our legs like that and make a lower center of gravity. Just throw him right over. But in the 1960s, none of the kids in the U.S. knew anything about martial arts. Now martial arts is all the rage.
And jiu-jitsu too.
Go ahead.
Jiu-jitsu is another one.
Mm-hmm.
Brazilian jiu-jitsu is a really effective fighting technique that has become very popular recently.
Mm-hmm. And mixed martial arts and goju rai or karate or kung fu and all of those kind of things are part of. And here's another one that's very interesting. Back in the 1950s and 60s, sports was everything, especially baseball. Baseball was the really big its cadets, and football, and then basketball came in and whatnot like that. But now look at it, the sports is falling apart. People are not going to the games anymore, and you can't blame that on COVID. You can blame it on the fact that people are not getting the value out of it that they were looking for. Hello, Corey. Good to see you.
Hi, Corey.
Well, it's good to see you guys too. I appreciate everyone here and appreciate the wisdom. Thanks for having me.
Uh-huh. Well, we're actually, even though we're down in the weeds about American culture right now, we're actually on the topic of the Open Sangha Foundation. So I'm glad that you've joined. So basically the point that I'm making is that the people of the West have become dissatisfied with every trinket and every toy that they've been given by society for the past 50 and 60 years, and we're still hungry. And now we've got a new kid on the block. What is that? AI. People who thought that they were going to get everything out of their job, they're not going to get it out of a job anymore because the computer's doing their job for them. And so what are people going to do? The answer would be, if we were doing it correctly, let's join Sangha. Let's get into a community. Let's get some friends around us so that we can share the physical things that we need rather than having to own it personally. A good example of that would be a lawnmower. Your average block in the United States, like television, every house has got a lawnmower. Every house has got a TV, right? Every one of them. How many lawnmowers does that neighborhood actually need? Maybe one. One lawnmower could cut all the grass. And most of the lawnmowers sit unused. The same thing is about our cars. Everybody's got one because we need it, but the statistics show that the cars are used, all of them, less than 2 hours a day. But if we learn to share, like with robo-taxi or whatever like that, that's going to revolutionize things. That in fact it's going to reduce the number of cars that are manufactured, but the cars that are manufactured are going to be manufactured by robots. And where's the people? So what is humanity going to do next? Well, we've got a plan. We've got some Sangha here. We've got actually what people were looking for all along, and they didn't know it. What they were looking for was actually some relief from their dukkha, some relief from their dissatisfactions. And here we've been looking at this, that, and the other thing all over the place, and we can't get no satisfaction. We can't get no satisfaction. Ron Stewart was right. We can't get any satisfaction. But what he didn't know, what Ron Stewart didn't know, was that the satisfaction that we need can be trained. It can be manufactured, or it can be had if we practice correctly. And so we, as a group, as a fairly large and growing group of people, can begin to help all of society by pointing out that we can, in fact, come out of our suffering and live a happy life without a job, without voting, without um, buying everything that we're supposed to buy, and live an easy, happy life. That if I need the grass cut, I'll find somebody who's got a lawnmower who is happily cutting grass and point out, well, here's some grass that you can happily cut. And that we can begin to live in a society that is, let us say, useful for people to live in. Because the society that the West has created now is kind of not going in the right direction. You could almost think of it as that we're in some sort of dive bomber that is diving, and we're gonna crash. It's going downhill, and you can see the downhill version of this by the way that um, oh, politics is going. Everybody is at everybody else's throat. Everybody is arguing. People don't agree with each other much. They can't, and yet we find satisfaction when we agree with other people. Why do we keep fighting with them? Because then we're going to be in a disagreeable state. We're going to be in dissatisfied. And so this is the idea for the Open Sangha Foundation, is to use that word Sangha, talk about it in the noble sense, but just the ordinary sense of being in a community, being among friends. And if the friend group that you're in is a noble group, then everyone begins to get noble in that group because we look up to those who are noble. We, let us say, emulate their behavior. One of the things that a lot of people don't understand is that every one of us is a failed attempt to out daddy our own daddy. That's what we're all about. We use daddy as a role model, and most daddies are not happy. And so we role model with these daddies, and we wind up being just like them. We've got several different indications of that. One of them is the young teenager. He says, "My dad don't know nothing. He's so stupid." And then when the kid's 25, he say, "You know, my dad's got some things going for him." And then when the guy's 35, he's like, "Wow, my dad is really on top of things." And then when he's 55, "My dad's a saint." Okay. What has happened is that this young man is comparing himself to himself, not his dad. And as we grow older, we begin to see our dads in a different way than we did when we were kids. But the dad himself doesn't do a whole lot of changes because dad himself didn't ever find something that was worth making a big change for. Even though dad changed a job, he didn't change his attitude about jobs. So we're kind of stuck in this system, and we've got the Buddha coming along saying, "Hey guys, you can get out of that system." But the way to do it is by getting around others who are also out of that system. We can give you better daddies to emulate. Wow, I mean, that's how I look at Bhikkhu Buddhadasa and Achan Po, is they're my daddies. They're something to really, really emulate, to do something like Achan Po. In fact, Achan Po is that kind of mentor for me, that like when I'm working with you guys and on the internet and doing this, my thought is always, well, what would Achan Po do? And generally the answer is, he ain't going to do nothing. He's going to get somebody else to do it.
Question.
And yes,
Can we ever meet Ajahn Po?
he's within 20 miles of here.
Oh, that would be cool. That'd be like a cool, when you're in school and you go on a field trip, like another advanced practitioner like Dhammarato. He's like your peer and like your friend or brother, and I think that would be cool.
Actually, I have been unsuccessful at that in the following way. Over the past few years, and especially just recently now that COVID is finished, there are a lot of students who are coming to South Thailand, partly due to my influences, but they always come for the retreats. But in fact, right now, Daniel is in the retreat over at Indira. Well, I won't go through all of the names of it, but the point that I'm making is that what I normally want people to do is go find out where Achan Po is, sit down, and don't leave until he does, and then follow him, go with him, stay around him. That's what I wanted Kimasi to. He just didn't understand. He thought that, oh, he's a monk and he's got to be to watch someone monk and practice meditation. And my answer to that was, get off your butt, find out where Achan Po is, and go sit down and stay within visual sight of him, and he will take you on as a student. But and I've seen this particular thing happen several times, that Achan Po will be sitting in the evening time, normally at about 6 o'clock. He'll go out and sit in the sala, and he will be surrounded by Thai people who have this question and that question. They come in families, they come in small groups, etc. And when the Westerners want to be with Achan Po and they see all of these Thai people there, they get discouraged and leave. And I found for myself that the right thing to do was to just stand there. Just stand. Do a standing meditation. Be there with Achan Po and just stand. This is a really good practice. But most of us have, oh, well, my time is valuable and Achan Po is busy. I'm leaving. Achan Po can see that too. He can see that. I cannot tell you how sharp that old man is. He is so sharp that he can read those minds that kind of way. In fact, Alex and I were chatting about that. This psychic ability is not magic; it's observational, and that we do things that we don't even know that other wise people can see right through us. So if we would stand there and wait our turn for Achan Po, he's going to take care of all the little Thai people who were standing and waiting, but then he'll say, come with me. And so that's the kind of relationship that I learned with Achan Po that a lot of people don't know, that he is really worth being around, standing around, just being there with him. And then there's other things that, like an example would be, I remember one time he was eating his meal there with the monks. This was at a time after I disrobed. And I says, okay, let me see if I can do this. How close can I get to Achan Po before he knows I'm there? And so first off, I do it behind him. I'm behind him because he's at the sala. He's got the back of the chair like this, and he's sitting there along with all of the other monks. And so I'm behind him, and I start walking up very slowly, one step at a time, making sure that when I'm taking a step, he was occupied. He was busy. And I was able to get up right behind him, right up behind the chair or the bench that he was sitting on. But when he turned to me, he didn't turn with surprise, oh, you're there. He turned and says, Sawati. And so he knew that I had been there. He just didn't make any gestures. And so here I am, all proud of myself. I can sneak up on Achan Po. Nope. But I learned that actually from him, because he would sneak up on me and I wouldn't know it. He'd sneak up on, well, the word sneak is the wrong kind of word to use. It's more like that he just walked up to me, but I was so occupied with doing other things, I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't out. I maybe gazing. And so if I was looking at something over there, one of the things that he would say would be, not sure. He just walked by saying, not sure. The English words, not sure, which means stop with our ideas that we know everything. Become not sure. Become open to new information. So this is the kind of training that I got from Achan Po that with the internet here, I can't give you. I can't give you that kind of training that I got from Achan Po. But you guys, when we get into Sangha, when we start meeting together, we can actually influence each other in that reality kind of way. And so the internet is actually quite limited, but wow, it's a whole lot better than nothing at all. And so I'm really glad to see you guys here because I can't sneak up on you and say ta-ta-ta, but I can give you the story about that. That's what Achan Po did to me, and that actually kind of proves the way that he trained me that the Western idea of concentration is not what we're looking for. Because concentration meditation means that we're narrowing down our focus. We're staying with something. And the reality of the real practice is that, yes, we are focused on something, but we know about everything else too. That we can look at something, but we can be aware of what's around us. Scott, you got a hand up.
I just want to say, I think the Skype teachings are sufficient if you apply it. But because the Dhamma is so simple, right? The instructions are kind of straightforward, and all you have to do is remember to do it. So if you just do it all the time and remember, or just keep do it whenever you remember to do it, and make it a unremitting habit, then it's completely enough to just learn it over the internet, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will now take the opportunity to congratulate you, Scott. I have been watching you with a great big smile. And I'm really glad that you're here today because I want to indicate that, yes, Scott's one of them who can get it from the internet. Not everybody can. I don't think that I would have been able to. But I was able to get it by being around folks like Achan Po and Achan Lee and Achan Virasak Viradamo and so many of the monks that I knew way back when. And so congratulations, Scott. I really got to give you that you've been able to figure out the Dhamma and how to live it and how to talk it, etc., like that. And we need you. We need you because you're an example of what is needed. Kishan, you too. You're one of them who's getting it. And I have to congratulate you too.
I was going to say congratulations to Scott as well. And also, since, we were just talking open Sangha of Sangha here and learning from you, well, is that when you do develop Sangha, you could have situations where one like I had with Eric, and when Eric and I were hanging out a lot together, we would actually play some of those games that you talked about doing with Achan Po as well to each other. So you do get a bit of that trickle over when you connect with Dhamma friends and develop Sangha.
Exactly. Yes. So you know what I'm talking about. By the way, it was when Robert was in Washington State, and I don't know how the two of you got into Washington State. I think, in fact, you took a vacation from Chicago just to go visit with Eric. Is that right? By the way, Eric is on his way to India right now for his full ordination. And Eric is another one. He got it. I am so pleased. But now he's actually got some real Thai monks, senior monks, and they're very impressed with him. So whatever he got off of the internet, they said, "You come with me."
Also, another thing I wanted to say is, what really did it for me was when I started teaching the Wednesday Sangha calls, because
Hmm.
once I started like teaching it, then I was like, oh crap, I really have to be the real deal. If I if I'm gonna actually teach it, I'm gonna actually have to do it.
Right.
So it kind of like strengthened my practice beyond previously what it was. If that makes sense.
That's actually true. And I will also say exactly the same thing about my teaching on the internet, starting in late 2015. Getting things really going in 2016 means that I've been at it for 7 years, and I've watched some of the profound learnings that I have had, sometimes from students. Okay, so I have learned a lot. And I actually know that there is a sutta where the Buddha talks about how to learn the Dhamma. And one of the items, in fact, the penultimate, the final item on that is teaching the Dhamma. That you really do learn the Dhamma when you've got, let us say, budding noble students under you. That Achan Po and I had talked about that the greatest joy that I've ever had was not getting my own mind straightened out, it's watching others do it too. And that's one of the things that Achan Po is, and I have talked about, that it's marvelous to watch other people actually get it. Now, that's hard to do if you don't have it, because if you don't have it and you see them get it, we get jealous. But if you've got it, then you want to share it. And you're really happy that you can share it, because then the people can actually gain the benefit. This is what Sangha really is all about, is that passage that the Buddha knew that it was profound, it was deep, it was difficult to talk about, and he almost went to the point of not bothering to teach it. But then he says, oh no, we got to do it anyway. We've got to teach this stuff. And so by him teaching it, he winds up with, Chanda and Sariputta and Mahamalaga and Mahakasapa and Mahakachana and all of these various monks who were actually able to get it. And then they also, part of their getting it was having other students. And so we have students who are both teachers and students, and we're all growing together. That's what makes Sangha. And this is why I want the Westerners to start paying attention to the Asian in the Asian Watts, as well as each other. That most of the Westerners, we kind of think that Buddhism can be gotten out of a book, all the details, and all I have to do is do what's in the book. But the book is not going to follow you around and beat you in the head and kick you in the ass when you're not following the book. You can be on page 65 of the book, and that page 65 in that book does not say, hey, man, you're on the wrong page. You're reading the wrong stuff. This is too advanced for you. You've got to go back to page 1. That's what you need to learn. But we read right past. We think that getting the value out of a book means to read the whole thing. They actually talk about it that way in the Bible. Have you read the whole Bible? Well, what good is that going to do? If you've got a Jesus standing right there with you, you might get some value out of him. But reading what he did in a book 2,000 years later, not going to be of much value. That it, in fact, what's really the teaching of the Buddha is the friendship, the camaraderie that we have. And that we do that on both ends. This is why the Buddha says that friendship is the entire teachings of the Dhamma. Friendship on the inside. You learn to be friends with yourself on the inside, and the easy way to do that is by learning to make friends with these nobles, to pay attention and respect to them. And so, even the students, when you join the noble Sangha, you kind of get the idea that I should behave and act nobly. And therefore, we do act nobly with each other and help each other that way. In places like Reddit, anybody can come in and everybody starts with the idea of, oh, I'm an ordinary person, but I know all of this stuff. Well, I'm going to teach them some stuff. And you wind up with having a lot of arguments and things like that. And that's what's become Buddhism rather than that friendship, that gushy feeling that you have for someone. That when I think about Bhikkhu Buddhadasa and Achan Po, I get really gushy inside. Feels really, really nice to reflect upon the qualities of Achan Po and whatnot like that. And so this is why we want to have Sangha. And if all we can get is Sangha online, then let's do that, because Sangha is really valuable online. But the real thing is to get around nobles. That's why I keep recommending everybody, let's go find some nobles. Let's go find some Watts in America. Go hang out there. Go find some real people that are worth being around. And so then if we meet someone, like in Chicago, we got a monk who came onto our group here, and he was active for a while. If Kishan had kept going back to that Wat, I imagine that monk would still be here. But anyway, that's the whole idea is that if we spend our time with nobles, it will be well spent time. And we can find that noble idea here on the internet. So this is what we're looking for. And that right now, the Open Sangha Foundation is actually underway. Corey, one of the things that I wanted to tell you, and so I'm glad to see you now, we've got the EIN. Congratulations to Kishan. We've got it. Took us 2 years to get that EIN, or actually longer than that, but mostly within the past year since we were trying to get it. So Robert and Corey and Kishan are all on the board, and I'm glad to see you guys here so that we can start to, let us say, do what we need to do to finish off the website so that we can start advertising it, so that we can get it out into public, so that we can start doing some newsletters. But the other thing, which I wanted to talk about today, was his name is Ron. Let me get his last name again. Serrano. Ron Serrano is open to the possibility of us working together. He says that he's got about 300 in his group, and that some of them are already Dhamma teachers, which is exactly what we would be looking for. And I know that it's quite easy to get into arguments with each other over, well, I know the Dhamma better than you do, or hey, man, you don't know this, that, and the other thing, and then we can get in. But that's not noble. That's not noble at all. No, that ordinary Buddhism is necessary. If there wasn't, because everybody starts out ordinary. Anytime that people get into Buddhism, they get into it from their belief systems, what they already know, etc., like that. And so the purification is getting rid of all of our old beliefs and all of our woulds, shoulds, coulds, rules, right rituals, and all of that kind of stuff, so that we can actually be friends. And we can be friends, nobly friendly, with people who are beginners, who don't know. And so this is the kind of thing that we need to look at is that we don't want to say, oh, well, you've got to have Dhammarato or Bhikkhu Buddhadasa's Dhamma in order to be part of the Sangha. We don't want to make those kind of distinctions, because that's not going to help the Dhamma spread. In fact, by making those kind of distinctions, we are already not noble. To say, oh, we only teach this and what you're teaching is wrong, is not a noble thing to say. That creates conflicts and difficulties. What we can say is, then in fact, a way of saying it would be the college professor of mathematics is grateful for first grade teachers who teach arithmetic. They're grateful. I'm really glad you guys went to first and second grade so that I don't have to teach you all of that. You already got some of the basics. You've got the foundation. You got what you need. So now let's take it from there. And so I want to make sure when I'm talking to Ron is that sectarianism has no place in the noble Dhamma, that there is only two kinds of Buddhism: the ordinary Buddhism, where everybody starts, and then the noble Buddhism, which everybody, if they're practicing well, they're practicing friendliness, they will wind up in the noble Sangha. And so
Yeah.
this is yes, Corey, go.
I got right. Thank you. I had some things that I wanted to, add the things that I felt were missing in our Sangha. And it definitely seems like if you ever were in a high school and you had kind of a college or a sports team, like a chess team or a football team, they always wanted the best people. And Buddhism doesn't want the best people, it wants everybody. And so I have often found in the seeker community, there is a kind of tendency to only want the best, only want to speak, only want to be known when you know what you're talking about. And if you're a beginner, you just don't have that. So there's a kind of tendency to want to be unknown until you know what you're talking about. And part of Sangha is about saying what you know and being wrong and having someone who's friendly to you, who actually has a bit of love for you. I don't say love is like a
I know what you
relationship
mean.
lover thing. It's just like a friendly kind of love, right? Like you
Mhm.
love your friends. So there's a kind of missing element that I have not been able to find in the Sangha. And because I'm on the board, that's part of my power, is to be able to create an environment that would maybe foster that. So yeah, I definitely sense the kind of the things that we're missing in our Sangha. And it's something that hopefully we'll be able to overcome in 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 years. However long it takes, there'll be some point when we're able to kind of have community of friendship that is also based around knowledge and truth and things. And so I definitely get what you're saying. There's a tendency of people to not want to share, to be silent, to be quiet, because they see themselves as students and they want to learn. But also Sangha grows by people having friendship and by being public and making mistakes. And so yeah, there's definitely some things that we could definitely add, and not necessarily I don't know, I just have some ideas, so I could see how things can go in our Sangha to be better and to have more community. More, it's not really about the community, it's about having a space and a culture.
Okay, I tell you what, I give you a challenge,
Hope
Corey.
things can go well.
My challenge to you is to go write that stuff down and we'll put it on the website. In fact, I challenge every one of you to figure out what we can do to make the Sangha grow, to make it more noble, to make it more friendly, to make it grow. And we can put that on the website so that everybody can gain that benefit.
Yeah, there's things are changing so rapidly nowadays. Things are just it's kind of like a new child being born, how the world is changing. When we say that there's a new technology like the internet and suddenly everyone can gather in a digital area, it takes a little bit for people to acclimatize and get used to that environment. So whenever we have created a new Sangha that is digital, most people aren't used to that. It takes them a little bit to get used to it. And you have to, I don't know, it's just kind of like a learning curve. And so I'm happy to be part of that ability to kind of make a different environment where it's really the same old thing, but it's kind of a new environment and we're doing new things. And so it's a little bit difficult, but it's exciting.
Welcome, Corey. Welcome, my friend. I'm really glad to see that you've gotten involved. And if you can see some of the things where we can improve, then I invite you to share that.
For sure. Got lots of
Yes.
ideas. Got lots of power to make a change. So we'll hopefully see that change come in time.
Well, that's part of the attitude that we're getting. That's the power. The power is the winner's attitude.
Yeah.
It's the can do. We can do this. We can, in fact, give the world an open Sangha where
Right.
people
And it
can
doesn't have to be
find
like our
friendship.
open Sangha that we build or create. What I've been noticing is that there is so much Sanghas that are out there. And so like our Sangha doesn't have to just be a Sangha. It can also be partially about connecting to other Sanghas that are
That's
already built. And then
Yes,
adding
that's exactly what I'm
as well.
getting at. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a great idea. I really like it. That's why I'm part of it, I guess. I guess that's why I'm part of it.
Thank you, Corey. Welcome, my friend. Welcome. You're one of the insiders already. A lot of people feel like they're on the outside, that they don't know what, etc., like that. But the more you communicate, the more you're involved, the more the meetings that you go to, and the more communications you have with others, you'll feel like you know them. You feel like that they know you, that you're acceptable, you're good enough. And we need that. Everybody needs that feeling of, I've got friends here. We've got friends. That's so valuable. It's one of the most I mean, people think, oh, if I had enough money, I would feel good. And yet, people who have tons of money don't feel good. But people who have a lot of friends, they're the ones who feel good because they can count on their friends. And so this is what we're looking for: is the friendship that is created through our efforts to be friendly, first to ourselves and then with others. But there's also the possibility of learning how to be friends with oneself because we've already learned how to be friendly because we were taught that from a noble friend. And so it works together. There's two sides of that coin. That friendship is first on the inside and then on the outside. But it doesn't
Yes.
really matter which happens first, but both of them have to go because the friendship is the entire Dhamma and it's the Sangha. You know, one of the statements that I've seen recently, in fact, it was on one of the chats that we had on the UK Sangha, where the statement was that the Buddha created the bhikkhu. That why did he create the bhikkhu? And the answer is that the Buddha didn't create the bhikkhu. The bhikkhus already existed. There were rishis in the forest, the long-haired guys, you know, it's actually part of the Asian tradition. You have Hindu swamis left, right, and center. So Buddha didn't invent the bhikkhu. What he invented was Sangha, the noble Sangha. That's what it's the bhikkhu Sangha that he created. And that bhikkhu Sangha still exists. But now we're going to be in the process of taking it online, making it a wide Sangha, an open Sangha, that it doesn't have to be, let us say, this little retreat center and the people who go to that retreat center is all their Sangha. No, we can connect that group to another group just like them, maybe across town or across the state. It doesn't matter. What we really understand is that we can find friends anywhere. That the Sri Lankan monks that I know, and in the United States, the situation is that there are a lot of Thai and Lao and Cambodian and Vietnamese, but not so many Burmese and not so many Sri Lankans. And so, like in England, for instance, the Sri Lankans in England, they attend Wat Amaravati, which is Theravada, but they're Theravada too, but the boundaries don't matter anymore. That whether they're Sri Lankan or whether they're Burmese is irrelevant. That that the monks Like, for instance, I spent a lot of time in the Vietnamese Wats. Some of them are Theravada, some of them are Mahayana. Then, in fact, the government in uh, Vietnam actually passed laws to unify the Theravada and the Mahayana. They did that partially because the Theravada was more in the south around Saigon, or what used to be Saigon, and the river delta and all of that, to where Mahayana was more northern, close to China. But now in the United States, the Vietnamese Wats are just Vietnamese Wats, except that they will have Thai monks, they will have Mahayana Vietnamese, and Theravada. They mix together. If the Sanghas, the Bhikkhu Sanghas, can do this, then so can the Westerners who are raised in a culture of denominationalism. That in fact, Christianity is not even seen as one thing. It's seen always as a great big, not even a conglomerate of various Christianities. There's always a lot of conflict within the boards. And so within the Noble Sangha, that means is we work very hard to not have any controversies. Getting along is the more important thing rather than being right. That was such a hard lesson for me to learn, guys. I was raised to be competitive. I was raised to be better than other people and to make sure that they knew it. And so it's quite a change around to come out of that mentality of the Western way of doing things, to recognize that being friends is more important than being right. That in fact, many of the people who were right got punished for it. Being right is not a good thing to do. Look what happened to Galileo. He was right, but he got into prison for it. Socrates, he was right, but he got poisoned for it. So being right is not the best thing to do. Being friends is the right way to go. And we only need just a little bit of right. In other words, the amount of things that need to be gotten right is very, very few. I would say, in fact, they're all listed right there on the Eightfold Noble Path. You got to get sati right. You got to get investigation right. You got to get right effort. And then you've got to get that right mojo, or that feeling of satisfaction and success. So these are the only things that we have to get right. Everything else we can screw up and have fun doing it. But in fact, the things that we normally think of what's right and what's not right is that there must be some rule that says that this is right. And we were given a lot of rules when we were kids. Oh, you've got to behave correctly. You've got to behave according to the rules. And here we're looking at it completely differently. And that is, we're not doing it according to the rules. We're doing it according to the results. And being right is not satisfying. Being right is downright dangerous. Being friendly, that's satisfying. And so this is where we're going with the Open Sangha Foundation, is to build friendship. And it doesn't matter whether they're sectarian or not. And in fact, the kids who are sectarian don't do that because they learned it from Buddhism. They are sectarian because they learned it from the culture. A really clear example of that, I see a lot of people who are Mahayana and that they look down on the Theravada. But in fact, Bhikkhu Buddhadasa and the Dalai Lama were friends with each other. They were not ever interested in what's the difference between Theravada and Mahayana. They were always interested in, can we be friends together? That's the joy of it, is that being right is not the issue. What's the issue is, let's be friends. And so I really like the fact that I've got so many friends now. I've got more friends right now than I've ever had in my life. Why? Because before, I was right. I was the best there was. I was first in the class, at least the one who handed in the homework. In fact, we did that intentionally um, as a competitive thing. Um, Dr. Guzewski, who was a PhD in computer science from MIT, when he came to the University of South Carolina, he had a procedure to where on Monday he would give an assignment. On Wednesday, he would teach the students how to do the assignment, and then the assignment was due on Friday. Well, I changed all of that. Because when he gave the assignment on Monday, it was my job to get that thing finished and turned in on Wednesday before he told the students how to do it. Well, I had the background. I mean, I'd already been working for IBM for 3 years, and so I had the kind of ability to do that. But it was also the habit that I had from high school. When the pop quiz in algebra or whatever that we were taking, it was my job to get that test in first. And I wound up sometimes being the butt of the joke of the class. Didn't have any friends in that class because I was better than all of them. Okay? And it did not get me the fulfillment that I was looking for. It was only when I came to the understanding of Buddhism as being the best is not the right way to go. Knowing the right thing, being better than other people, is a tragedy. But the better thing to do is let's make friends. You don't have to know what I know to be friends, and I don't have to know what you know to be friends. We can just be friends. And then, in fact, in a way, we can help each other. We can teach each other. Because every one of you have things that I don't have. And if we compare each other, we're not going to get anywhere. But if we cooperate with each other, then I know what you know and you know what I know, and we're all friends and happy together. So anyway, that's my talk today. I haven't even talked about the various groups of people because there's a lot of different groups. There's beginners, there's teachers, there's those who want to learn more Dhamma, all of that. There's a whole lot of different variety of people, but the answer for each one of them is let's be friends. Does anybody have any remarks or anything more to say about this? I've just been harping on this one topic for so long. Laurent, do you have anything to say? Corey, go ahead.
I just thought I'd add some comedy in there for a second. I said, I'll be your friend.
Okay. Excellent.
You've got a friend in me. There you go.
I know you. In fact, whenever I think about you, Keyshawn, I begin to sing the song from Carole King. You've got a friend. You know that song?
I do know that song. Yeah.
Yeah. They'll hurt you. They'll desert you. They'll take your EIN.
Actually,
Sean, don't take my EIN, bro.
I was quoting Scott because Scott said that to me earlier. So shout out to Scott. He's not here right now.
Yeah.
So I think that we've carried this conversation about as far as we can go with the idea that we're making success. We're on a roll here. We can combine and work with other groups. We can get them involved with this. There's no reason for us to have this I, me, and mine kind of mentality that we're looking for helping Buddhism grow, first off, in an ordinary way and get millions of people involved with Buddhism in an ordinary way, because out of those millions of people who are involved with Buddhism, maybe several 100,000 of them will get the bug, will get bitten, will become really enthusiastic, because that's what the real teaching of the Buddha is all about, is that when we get some good friends, we really become enthusiastic about the Dhamma. And that word enthusiasm is the best way to describe what is a sotapan. The one who will jump into the Dhamma and swim and live in the Dhamma is the one who is standing on the shore enthusiastic to jump in. not full of trepidation, not worried, but one who is enthusiastic. And this is where we can actually, the friendship is what teaches us the enthusiasm, not a book. No one gains much enthusiasm from a book, but we can gain it from our friends. We can get enthusiastic because they're enthusiastic. And so we
I
can
was going to say,
swim in the
Dhammarato,
Go ahead.
tonight, it must have been because either I got lucky and we got the EIN today, but this talk, I mean, happy to witness it, and it's been very in the way of inspiring a lot of enthusiasm tonight, for sure.
Great. Excellent.
Thank you.
Yes. So, did anybody have anything? David, do you have something to say?
Yeah. I often wonder, like, I meet a lot of people that are into the ordinary Dhamma, and I wonder, like, how to bring them into more of a noble view of the Dhamma.
Gosh, you haven't been listening, have you? So I'll say it again. Be friends with them. Don't bring them into the noble Dhamma. Just be friends with them.
Yeah.
I think a good one is kind of like, have you ever, I mean, it seems hard to say like I have a famous friend, but Dhammarato is a degree of famous. Despite all other things, he's kind of famous. So like a good way to introduce someone is to not really, it doesn't have to be Dhammarato. I mean, Dhammarato has given his gift to other people. So like when you talk to someone who knows, who has trained a lot, like I've done some things like, I think Alex has done a lot. There's, I would say like maybe 10 good, strong people who you could say like, it's almost like taking your friend to like a celebrity theater or something. You're kind of like, I got this guy. He's almost a celebrity in Buddhism, like kind of, you could not really amp them up, it's not something like that, but you would kind of be like, hey, rather than you, because I know you have attainments, you have ability, right? So I know that you have that, but we all don't want to be like, we don't want to entice someone into Buddhism with our attainments, because that just kind of causes problems. It's just like a problem. We want to kind of be, not that we want to do that, but we can be like, I know this guy, his name is Keyshawn, he knows a lot of shit, like let's see what he has to say, That's me kind of downplaying it. I would maybe say like Dhammarato or someone else, or like just kind of like, rather than you saying, I'm going to show you about Buddhism, because I know you could, but it helps if you could kind of like put the blame on someone else, blame someone else for being great at Buddhism. And then over time, they will come to know your level of ability, and you could have more candid conversations, because that's really kind of, I think what people want is they want community. So it's not that we want just like understand the truth ourselves. We want to be in a community and be like, hey, like we want to be in a community with other people. And it helps to blame someone else for being so enlightened, just be like, I know this guy, he knows a lot, he's great stuff, like I could kind of show you. And it just helps. I think it's like an easy way to bring someone in, is kind of like blame someone else for being super enlightened. And then over time, you could kind of like help them and show them, and it becomes, if it becomes revealed to them, they might not be that perceptive, but it just makes it easier. Because like last thing that I want is all my friends to know kind of like how enlightened I am. I really just would rather they meet me on the level that they always known me. I don't really want to kind of like shatter their perceptions of me. So my preferred way to go about things is to introduce other people to the things I like, which would be Dhamma and enlightenment and truth and knowledge and stuff,
And
by
friendship.
introducing them to someone else who I learned from. And Sangha is a great way to do that, to kind of like get their feet wet without really having to kind of commit to being like, I know a lot, you could come to me, and it just kind of puts more pressure. So yeah, blame someone else for being super enlightened, and kind of introduce your friend to that other person, which is a gift to both you and them. And then the other person who gets to share something and teach something, they also get to benefit too. And it helps them in a lot of ways too. So it's not bad for anybody really to kind of play it in this way that I've said, like, you know, blame enlightenment and all that stuff. That's just kind of a game. But yeah, bring them in by introducing them to a friend that you know who maybe just knows as much as you or less than you. But I don't know. I just kind of like maybe try that, and maybe that'll help.
I would say, Corey, thank you for what you said. You just gave me an idea of how to complement that, and that is that we don't need to give very, very long, complicated answers to our friends when they're asking us little questions. That in fact, if you go around with a big smile on your face and greet everybody like that, like everything is great, everything is hunky-dory, got no problems at all, and I'm really glad to see my friends, others will begin to question that. Let them do the asking. That Buddhism doesn't proselytize, we invite. But the invitation is only given to those who are already kind of curious, and so we kind of wait for them. In other words, if my joy, if my friendship is not worthy of them even noticing, then what I want to teach them about Buddhism is irrelevant. But if they can notice that I'm happy, that I can smile, that I tease people, that I treat people friendly, it doesn't matter what, then they'll become curious about that. They'll say, oh, you're happy. How can I be happy too? And the answer to that, number one, is hang around me and I'll tease you and you'll be happy. And number two, very simple Dhamma, don't worry, be happy. Don't worry, be happy. When I ran across that, it was like, that's the entire teaching of the Buddha right there. Dukkha Nirodha is don't worry, be happy. And so that's all that we need to teach our friends, but they have to be ready to hear that. And then they need to be around somebody who is happy so that they can keep seeing it. They can be happy because you're happy, and then they can be happy because they know how to be happy, because they can stop worrying and be happy. So there's not much of an education that needs to be done. It's the fact that can we remember the very little bit of education that we need? And we can learn those habits by seeing other people practicing those habits. And so that's why the Sangha becomes so important. That in fact, it's quite possible for a monk to never practice meditation, not sit down in the meditation hall even one time, but he becomes noble because he's hanging out with noble people. And yet in the West, the mentality is that, oh, it's meditation. That's the big dude. You got to go sit on the floor in a special hall with a special incense and a special candle and a special this, that, and the other thing. And if you sit there for 20 or 30,000 hours, then something magic's going to happen. The common machine is going to waltz in there, do some Shaktipat, and then you'll feel good. And that's what most people have the idea about meditation, is that it's off into the future. So if there's anything that you can do with the people that you're around now is to show that no, joy and happiness, the Dhamma, is right here. Here it is.
Yeah, so many people I find are just locked in like they think Buddhism is a religion. Like they're so locked in a viewpoint of what Buddhism is, and like it's like hard to bring them out of that. I think even if you're happy, they don't really see that, or like they don't really find that interesting.
They don't. Well, that's because they haven't seen it yet. But if you hang around with these people and they keep seeing you being happy over and over again, they'll begin to recognize, oh, there's something here. Because everybody's happy once in a while. But when you run across somebody who just doesn't stop, he's just joking all the time, he's happy and laughing and free, then you know that this guy has something else that other people don't have. And the answer is friendship. That's what he's got.
Yeah. The thing that I was going to say is like, in a lot of modern society, they teach us about mind and they teach us about knowledge, but they don't teach us about heart And heart to me is hard to teach. It's about like your ability to bear happiness. It's about strength. It's about like when they say someone has heart, they usually mean like they could go forward in the battle. They have heart to face fear and face pain, right? What that means in the Buddhist sense is like they don't avoid things. They have the heart. So in
The lion
spiritual,
heart.
you have to have mind and heart. And our society doesn't really train heart; they train mind. And when it comes when it comes to what you said, like when it comes to heart, the heart that they're missing the ability to bear happiness. A lot of times it just feels weird to them. It feels uncomfortable, and they just don't really have the it's I don't know, that's but for me that's kind of what it's come down to is like your ability to be happy and to stay happy, to allow yourself to be happy. It's a kind of heart and a self-love. You have to love yourself enough to allow yourself to be happy. And in Buddhism and a lot of stuff, it's easy to train in the knowledge, in the mind of things. That's what our society trains us to do, what modern society trains us to do. And I say modern as in like Western. A lot of modern is Western. Um, you just don't really train for that. And so, like, I don't find it too surprising that people have a hard time digesting the benefit of Buddhism because it's supposed to make you happy, and they don't really have the heart to love themselves and to allow themselves to.
Exactly. That Buddhism, you could say, teaches how to be wise, which means how to see, and how to be happy, how to be friendly. And yet, most people in the West think that getting more knowledge, what you know, is the important thing. But knowledge, I mean, someone can be really wise and not know much of anything. Your average shaman in the village, he is wise and he knows how to handle relationships and teach people like that. In fact, that's why the Thai people keep going to the Thai monks, is because the monks are wise. But that doesn't mean that they're highly educated. Some of them may not even know how to read and write, and yet they're wise. So wisdom has nothing to do really with knowledge. It has the ability to see what's going on. And so getting the Westerners trained out of getting more knowledge. I mean, how many Dhamma books have people read? I know people like, I don't need to mention names, but when I see Dan Ingram on screen, he's got a whole bookshelf full of Dhamma books behind him. He's got thousands of Dhamma books, right? And Dhamma is not in a book. Dhamma is in your heart. That's where we find it, in the friendship, in the ability to see. So anyway, guys, thank you. And I especially appreciate what you've been saying, Corey. I really like it when you come on.
I like being here.
Yeah. So, Alistair, do you have anything left to say?
Can you even hear my microphone right now?
Yes, I can hear you just fine.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. um, well, the whole like reason I came and like started coming to these like calls and like stuff is because like I kind of just got bored like talking to like my regular like not that I was like bored talking to them, but that like I couldn't like talk about like like noble stuff, not like that kind of stuff, and like of course I like haven't really talked much, but it's still like just like fun to like be like around people that like are like into that kind of thing, I guess.
Yeah, living more real. I'm more in tune with my heart. Say what I think and I feel, and for sure, it feels better to be like honest. Feel like and if the people that you're around, if they can't reciprocate, like you'll feel a gnawing desire, a hunger for that community that can reciprocate and understand. And so I think that's a natural part of life, and good on you for understanding it, for feeling it, for seeking out a community that could understand or to kind of reciprocate. So yeah, glad for you to find us and glad for you to be here as well.
Right. That social part that you're talking about is instinctual.
Yeah, that's one come.
It's the nesting instinct. We want to be with others. That one human being by himself cannot survive. We've got to cooperate. And yet our society is teaching us, no, you're a rugged individualist. You've got to do it on your own. And so that goes against the instinct. But humans instinctively are social, not competitive. That the competition comes with the other social group. So when our social group gets social, and that social group over there becomes social, that means that now we've got two social groups that'll go to war with each other. My social group is better than your social group. And that's the danger that we're trying to prevent here with the Open Sangha Foundation, so that all the little Sanghas can come and be part, to go together. That it's not a matter of doctrine. It's not a matter of facts in knowledge. It's more the facts of friendship and the facts of, can we see clearly? Looking and seeing clearly. That's all there really is to it. And so we can teach that. Those sanghas that are in fact little sanghas, because they're competitive, can find better ways of operating even within their small sangha. They can learn the friendship. They can really get it. That in fact, most of the Westerners don't really even understand. They just think that any organization is a sangha. We talk about the Bhikkhu Sangha because they're all monks. Or we have the little, let us say, Hill Street Sangha, and all the people go to the Hill Street Meditation Center. They're part of the Hill Street Sangha, but yet most of the people who go to the Hill Street Sangha don't really understand what Sangha is all about anyway. But having a bigger Sangha that people can look at, join, and understand that it's really all about friendship, then we can help the little Sanghas be more friendly with each other rather than competitive. So anyway, we've really gone today. We're almost 2 hours in. This is a long talk, and I didn't even think that it'd be this long. So one last thing, and that is, Robert, are you still online, or did you go to sleep? Oh, he's here. Okay. Yeah, Robert, give me a call. We've got some business between the two of us about the website that I'd like to talk with you about, because now's the time.
Sounds good.
Excellent. Okay, does anybody else have anything to say? All right, well, let's go ahead and finish it, guys. To be honest with you, I've had about as much joy today as I can stand.
Thanks for sharing it.
Yes. Okay, guys, we'll see you soon. Thank you all so much.
Bye-bye.
Cheers, everyone.
Yes.
Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.